I've got a problem. No, it's not what you're thinking. Well, later on tonight it might be. For the time being, I've got a problem, and that is Palau Reef is currently skimmerless. One night in, the skimmer's been working. We've got about 10 litres of pretty dark skim, mate. Looks like she's catching up for lost time. We're back in action, baby. Make it a little bit tidier. Poking someone's very big ego here. Entirely true. I do have this AquaMedic 6 foot tall skimmer. The problem I've got is not with the skimmer body itself, it's with the AC AquaMedic Ocean Runner needle wheel pumps. I'm down to only one pump on this side here, and this side the pump died. And this pump is also on its way out. The problem I've got is that you can't get these AC needle wheel pumps anymore. I believe they've replaced them with a DC runner, but despite my research online, I can't find the DC runner needle wheel pump. You could probably order them in, but to be honest with you, they're probably going to cost me a small fortune. And who knows, I might be looking at getting a new skimmer or a new set of pumps, but until then, I need to figure out a bit of a solution. There's got to be another way. An idea came to me from a friend who suggested that back in the day, of course, all protein skimmers were driven by airstones. And I decided to give it a crack, messing around with a little gang of these Bioscape limewood airstones, driven off this Halia 87 litre per minute 91 watt air blower. That's worked really quite well, but of course these airstones are due to be replaced. They cost between about $4 to $7 a piece, and sometimes they're a little bit tricky to get hold of. So I figured maybe I can have a crack. Maybe I can make my own limewood airstones and, you know, beef them up just a little bit. And that'll see me through at least till I can save some money when the old pocketbook's a bit fatter and I can invest in a new skimmer. Did a bit of research online, and it seems that the limewood tree is a European native, but it's also called basswood in the United States. With some further research, I realised that basswood is the lightweight timber that's used for carving and is available at craft and hobby stores. So guess what I did? This is a 24 inch by 8 inch by 2 inch, or 60 centimetres by 20 centimetres by 5 centimetres slab of basswood, and it's pretty expensive. It cost me $99, but out of this I would expect to get at least 18 good sized airstones. I also picked up a threaded 15mm to 10mm director and borrowed a tap to tap a thread into my airstone. Let's get started. This is the original Bioscape limewood airstone, and it measures 55mm by 20mm, which is, let's just say it's roughly 2 inch by 1 inch. So as a guide, I was using 4 of these stones, and that's it there. It would pretty much fit directly. I could cut this into a whole stack of tiny pieces that would match these and create a whole bunch of airstones, but I'm not going to do that. I want to create a larger airstone rather than using a gang of smaller ones. I will point out I have tried some other types of airstones. This is a Sweetwater oxygen diffuser. It's designed for pressurized oxygen and requires a higher pressure to run, but consequently it does have a finer bubble compared to the standard Sweetwater airstones. I did trial this, but unfortunately the bubble size is still too coarse. It just didn't create that fine mist that a timber airstone can. So that was not successful. The first thing I'm going to do is just mark out the size of the airstone that I wish to do. I think before cutting the entire slab into the same sized airstone, I might just trial the first one and make sure I'm happy before I then go and use the drop saw and prepare a whole bunch of additional airstones. Thinking about cutting a 50mm by 100mm airstone, so it'll be a 4" by 2" by 2" airstone. Now I will point out that if you are making a similar size limewood airstone, you could quite easily remove the barb fitting that comes with the original airstone and just reuse that. In my case, I'm looking to upsize the airline going to this larger airstone, therefore I'm not going to do that, and instead I'm going to fit this larger 10mm and 15mm thread director straight into there. So to do so, we're just going to find the midpoint. It's about the length I want the air to transport through. So I'm just going to use a little piece of electrical tape here as a marker or a depth gauge, so I know when to stop. Now that was the hole to allow the air to pass and distribute all the way down to the depths of the airstone, but I don't need the hole that is to be tapped to be quite that deep. It just needs to be the depth of the thread. All right, so I've just cleaned out the hole with any sawdust, and now what we're going to do is just thread this director into the airstone itself. Old airstone, brand new supersized airstone. Let's hook her up and see how she works. If the vinyl tubing is a bit tight going over a barb fitting, you can quite readily heat the vinyl tubing up with some hot or boiled water, and that'll soften it and allow you to push it over a lot easier. Now the good part about this is I don't need to construct or buy additional directors every single time. I can unthread this one and simply thread it into the replacement airstone that I've made up. So it's not like I'm having to throw the entire thing away. Now, one of the other things that I've done to make it to facilitate the airstone to stay down the bottom, because obviously full of air and being light, these things want to float and come off. I've just got this bit of plastic, I don't know what you call it, plastic trim. It's sort of a C shape, and it's just enough to fit the 10mm tubing inside of it. What that will allow me to do is to, number one, use it as a bit of a handle to pull the airstone out, but number two, it'll keep it nice and tight and tucked inside there, and when I drop it down, it's going to keep it down at the bottom of this skimmer body. So I simply go up all the way. I push, you see I push the airstone director and the tubing in, and then I go down, and as I'm going down, I progressively push the slack vinyl tubing into the length of the plastic trim. Smaller skimmers back in the day had the airstone coming up from the bottom, and they were often smaller nanotype skimmers, hang on the back kind of things, and the airstone would float up and just float there from the connection underneath. Now I clearly can't do that, and so I needed to find a way to get the airstone down, stay down, but also get it out. Plumbed in a T with a valve, and that's just a bleed valve that I can open up to bleed off excess pressure and divert it to some more airstones or whatever it might be. And I had previously drilled a hole into the side, the upper side of my skimmer body, and put in a rubber grommet. Rubber grommets just fit into some form of larger pipe and allow a smaller pipe to pass into and gain access to the center of the larger one, and creating a seal around where the smaller pipe goes into. So, I feel like I'm stroking someone's very big ego here. So I realise that not everyone is a saltwater keeper that watches this channel, and I know that certain freshwater keepers get a little bit confused as to what a protein skimmer is. But if you think about it very simply, a protein skimmer is simply a cylinder, usually made of acrylic or perspex, usually clear, that allows the mixing of water, seawater, and very fine bubbles of air. And if you think about the old surf beach where you see that brown grey scum accumulate after storms, that's what a protein skimmer is doing. The tiny bubbles of air are attracting dissolved organic waste in the water. They attract it, and as they float up and into this conical shaped neck, it concentrates and develops a stable foam that then gets pushed up and out of the top of the neck and into a collection cup. You can see this little bit of a contraption on the side of my my skimmer cup just here. That nut is just attached to a drain hose. That means that I don't have to take this skimmer cup off and clean it out every few days. The foam and the waste that accumulates in this cup will drain down this tube and into this 20 litre or 5 gallon bucket. Gradually the foam that's inside the skimmer will become more stable, and you'll get a steady head of foam that pushes up and out and into this collection cup. Too much air or too much water, too much turbulence, and you don't get a steady head of foam. So it just takes a little bit of tweaking for the first few days, and then after that you're pretty well set. Now if you put too much air in the skimmer, a bit like I've done at the moment, you can see there's bubbles coming up just here. What you're going to do is create a very wet skimmate. Skimmate is what's called, skimmate is the scum that's collected inside this cup. You can see how it's wanting to belch out and roll down the collection cup fairly readily. That means that it's too wet. I need to back off either the water delivery, or in my case, because I just tweaked it, the air delivery. So you can see straight away I've let off some more air, and that is starting to slow down and will create a bit more of a steady head of foam. Now I know just the thing to do with this excess air. Something I haven't shown you guys yet. Let's go have a look. Now somewhere behind here, there's that hole right there. This is 1/2 inch, 12 mil, flexible vinyl tubing. You're going to pass it through the hole and connect it to the bleed line of the pump. Now you haven't seen what's going on behind my shed just yet, and I will show you, but that comes in a future video. But this aquarium here, which is partitioned, is in need of some air stones to help a certain amount of macroalgae to tumble. So I think you know where that might go, but that'll be the perfect use for the excess bleed air from my protein skimmer pump. A little bit rough, but this 10 mil tubing with the manifold should fit, yep, inside the half, and I think by the time I push it all the way up into this director component, that should get a fairly good seal. Yep, certainly is. There we go. There's our air. So at the end of one DIY project brings the start of another. In this case, my outdoor macro algae scrubber that's quite nicely utilising the bleed off air from the protein skimmer. So one night in, the skimmer's been working. We've got about 10 litres of pretty dark skimmate. Looks like she's catching up for lost time. We're back in action, baby.